My sister stole my wedding dress. She wore it to my reception, and I let her. I even helped her with the zipper that morning, adjusted it myself, smoothed the lace at her shoulders, told her she looked beautiful. Because I needed her to walk into that room wearing evidence. What she didn't know was that I had spent 14 days building something she couldn't undo. This is what patience looks like when someone mistakes it for weakness. My name is Claire. I want to tell you something before I tell you anything else. I am not a person who makes scenes. I don't raise my voice at dinner tables. I don't send angry texts at midnight. I have spent most of my adult life being the one who absorbs things quietly and figures out what to do with them later. My sister Megan knew this about me. She had known it my whole life, and she used it. 3 years ago, I was engaged to Daniel. We had been together 6 years. Not a perfect 6 years, a real one. The kind of relationship where the silence between two people feels like rest instead of distance, where you learn someone's worst habits and decide they're yours to carry too. He proposed on a Tuesday evening. Nothing staged. Kitchen table, takeaway cooling in the containers, him looking at me the way people look when they've been holding something for a long time and finally decide to say it. I said yes before he got to the question. Megan was the first person I called. She drove over that same night, bought Prosecco, sat on my kitchen floor with me while I called our mother, both of us laughing at nothing in particular, the way you laugh when something good has finally arrived. She held my hand at one point, squeezed it. I thought that meant she was happy for me. Looking back now, I understand she was performing it, because there were signs. Small ones, the kind you file away without meaning to. The way she went quiet when someone at the engagement party congratulated me for too long. The way her questions about the wedding were never quite about helping. They were about knowing. Every detail, every decision. Where the venue was, who the photographer was, and what I was wearing. I called it love at the time. Now I call it something else. The dress was where it started. I'm not someone who spent her childhood imagining a wedding dress. That wasn't me. But when I walked into the boutique on a Saturday morning and tried on that ivory lace gown, off-shoulder, hand-stitched buttons running the full length of the spine, something shifted that I wasn't expecting. I looked in the mirror and felt seen. Not decorated. Not dressed up for someone else's version of a special occasion. Seen. I cried. The shop owner handed me tissues and pretended it was the first time she'd watched that happen. Megan was standing behind me. She put her hands on my shoulders, looked at me through the mirror, and said, "Claire, you look perfect." Perfect. That word sat with me for a long time. Now I understand she didn't mean it the way I thought. I paid the deposit that afternoon, left the dress for alterations, the waist taken in slightly, the train hemmed. The shop told me it would be ready 10 days before the wedding. I could collect at any time after that with my receipt and my ID. I went home and started addressing invitations. Everything was normal, until the call. 2 weeks before the wedding, the boutique. I answered, expecting a fitting update. The owner's voice was careful in a way that didn't belong to routine conversation. She said, "Hi, Claire, I'm just calling to check. Everything went okay with the pickup?" Something in my chest went still. I said, "I haven't picked it up yet." Silence. Then a woman came in 3 days ago. She had your name. A written note with your signature permitting early collection. I sat down on the stairs. Not because my legs gave out. They didn't. Because I needed a moment to let my brain catch up to what my gut had already understood. I thought about the signs I'd filed away. Every one of them. Then I asked one question. "Do you have security cameras?" She said yes. I said, "Please don't delete anything. I'll be in touch." I sat on those stairs for 4 minutes. I didn't call Megan. I didn't cry. I didn't send Daniel a panicked message. I made a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and started thinking. Forging a signature and timing it to a wedding date isn't impulsive. An impulsive person makes a scene and regrets it. What Megan had done required planning. It required her to study my handwriting, to know the shop, to choose her moment. If she had a plan, then so did I. What I found over the next 48 hours, I wasn't prepared for it. 3 days before the wedding, I met Megan's flat to return her spare key. She'd lent it to me months back, before a trip abroad, and I'd been meaning to return it for weeks. She isn't home. I post the key through the letterbox. And as I turned to leave, I glanced through the side window into her hallway. Hanging on the outside of her wardrobe door, visible clearly from the corridor, is an ivory lace dress with hand-stitched buttons running down the spine. Freshly steamed. On a padded hanger. My dress. In her flat. I stood there for 4 seconds. Then I took out my phone. But the dress wasn't the thing that stopped my breathing. Tucked into the corner of the mirror beside it was a printed email. And in the header, I could just make it out when I zoomed in on the photograph, was Daniel's name. I walked back to my car, sat down, looked at the photographs I'd taken through the glass. My hands were completely steady. That surprised me. I thought they would shake. I drove home and called Daniel. Voice even. Almost casual. I asked him if anyone had been in contact recently with concerns about me or our relationship. A pause. Longer than an innocent question deserves. He said, I was going to tell you. Here is what Megan had done. 3 weeks before our wedding, she created an anonymous email account. She contacted Daniel. Told him I had been seeing someone. Gave a name, entirely invented. Said she had photographs. That she was reaching out as a concerned party because he deserved to know before he made a permanent decision. 6 messages. 11 days. A whole constructed story, consistent enough to be believable, detailed enough to be disturbing. Daniel said he hadn't believed it, but it had unsettled him. He'd been carrying it quietly, looking for the right moment to bring it up, while Megan sat at our engagement dinner and smiled across the table at me. I let that sit for a moment. Then I called our mother. She had forwarded me a voicemail weeks earlier, distressed when she sent it, not sure what to do with it. Megan had meant to call her friend. She dialed one number too high in her contacts. And she left a message. I listened to it 3 times. Her voice was calm. That's the part I couldn't stop returning to. Not desperate. Not angry. Calm. The way someone sounds when they've decided something and stopped fighting themselves about it. She said she was exhausted. Said she had tried for years to celebrate me, to stand in the background and applaud. Said the wedding was where it ended. Said she had a plan and she was going to see it through. A plan. I sat with that word for a long time. I thought about the boutique. About the forged note. About the 6 emails to Daniel. About the printed email with his name tucked into the mirror frame next to my dress in her flat. This wasn't jealousy. Jealousy is painful and passive. What Megan had was something she had been building quietly. Something shush. Eve decided was fair dot. I didn't feel angry. I felt something colder. More specific. Clarity. The next morning, I called the boutique owner back. She emailed me a still from the security footage. Megan at the counter. The forged note changing hands, walking out with the garment bag. Time stamped. The shop's name is in the corner of the frame. Clear enough to print. I saved it in 3 places. I sat with Daniel and went through every fake email she'd sent him. 6 of them. I screenshotted each one. I transcribed the voicemail word for word. I put everything on a USB drive and labeled it with the date. Then I called the venue's AV technician. He said the projector was already configured for the photo presentation. I said, perfect. I have some additional slides. The wedding morning arrived. I wore the backup gown. A simple, elegant column dress I'd sourced quietly from a sample sale the week before. 200 pounds. Several guests told me I looked beautiful. I thanked them and meant it. And Megan walked into the reception hall wearing my original dress. She walked slowly, like someone who had rehearsed the entrance. Head level. The full effect. Guests turned. Our aunt said she looked incredible. A cousin asked where the dress was from. She smiled and said it was something she'd been saving for a special occasion. I watched from across the room. I smiled too. Because in 38 minutes, the champagne toast would begin. And I would be the one holding the microphone. She found her seat at the family table, poured champagne, laughed at something our uncle said. She was completely relaxed. She had won, as far as she knew. She had planned and executed, and I had never said a word. She was wearing my dress in my reception hall at my wedding, and she believed I hadn't noticed. The toast was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At 8:55, Daniel put his hand on my back. He didn't say anything. He just stood there beside me. That was enough. I picked up the microphone. People asked me if I hesitated. Standing there with 200 people in front of me, and my sister at the family table in my dress, did I feel doubt? Did any part of me consider pulling back? No. And I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters. For a moment, One quiet moment, somewhere in those 14 days of preparation, I asked myself whether I was overreacting, whether there was a version of this where I had misread something, where the forged note was a misunderstanding, where the fake emails were someone else, where the voicemail wasn't what it sounded like. Then I listened to it again. I have a plan, and I am seeing it through. I wasn't overreacting. The dress was the surface. What Megan had actually done was spend 3 weeks trying to take apart my relationship from the inside. She had forged my signature. She had fabricated a story designed to make Daniel question 6 years of something real. She had used a fake identity. She had left an organized, considered voicemail describing a campaign she had thought through carefully enough to execute in multiple stages. And then she put on my dress and walked into my wedding reception and accepted compliments. This wasn't a single bad decision. It was a series of them, each one deliberate. I picked up the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. The room quieted. Daniel and I are genuinely overwhelmed by this. 6 years of building something together. And tonight, it feels like everyone who is any part of that is in one room. That means more than either of us can say. I let it sit. Before we toast, I want to share something. We've put together a short presentation, a few images, to say thank you to the people who made today possible. If you could just look at the screen behind me. The projector came on. I didn't start with the CCTV footage. I didn't start with the emails. I started with the voicemail. Her words. In clean white text. Projected on a screen in a room with 200 people. I have tried for years to be happy for her. The wedding is the breaking point. I have a plan and I am seeing it through. The room read it in stages. Like a wave moving outward from the screen. Megan looked up. Her smile stayed for 2 seconds past the moment it should have ended. Then something behind it went out. Second slide. Screenshots of the fake account emails to Daniel. Her fabricated story. The invented name. The messages were designed to dismantle something she couldn't have herself. She stood up. Claire? Third slide, I said. Into the microphone. Evenly. The security footage. Megan is at the counter. The forged note. Her walking out with my dress in the garment bag. Timestamp in the corner. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of people waiting. The particular silence of 200 people understanding the same thing at the same time. Our father set his champagne glass on the table. Didn't pick it up again. Our aunt, who 40 minutes earlier had told Megan she looked incredible, turned in her chair and stared at her without speaking. Megan looked around the room, from face to face, looking for a way out. Looking for one person who might stand with her. She found no one. I lowered the microphone slightly. Said it quietly. The way you say something that doesn't need volume. Megan, that's my dress. No one moved. No one even breathed. And then, from the family table, our mother's voice. Quiet. The specific quiet of a decision that has already been made. Take it off. Something left Megan's face. Not anger, not defiance. Something I can only describe as the moment a performance ends and there's nothing underneath it. She picked up her bag, pushed back her chair, and walked out through the side door in my dress, barefoot, because she'd slipped off her heels at the table. The door closed behind her. 3 seconds of silence. Then Daniel took the microphone gently from my hand, put his arm around me, and said, "She is the most patient woman I have ever known. And I am the luckiest man in this room." The applause started. Real applause, not polite. The kind that comes from something genuine. I stood in a 200-pound sample sale dress at my own wedding and felt more at home than I had in months. But there was one more thing. Something I hadn't shown anyone. Something I'd been carrying in my phone for 6 months, filed away quietly, almost forgotten. And it changes everything about what this story is actually about. Let me tell you what happened in that room after she left. Nobody rushed to speak. Nobody cheered. The room stayed in a specific kind of silence. The kind where people are deciding what to do with something they've just learned. Then it broke. Slowly, then all at once. Our father walked over to me. He held my face in both hands the way he used to when I was small and had hurt myself. He looked at me. Didn't say anything. Just nodded once, slowly, and walked away. I knew what that meant. Our uncle, Megan's godfather, sat at the family table for the rest of the night without speaking to anyone. He wasn't angry. He was rearranging decades of memory, I think. Deciding which version of events was the real one, now that he had to choose. The night continued. The music came back on. Daniel and I had our first dance to the song we'd chosen 6 months earlier, and it was exactly what I had imagined. And I was wearing a dress from a sample sale, and none of the rest of it mattered in the slightest. But some things happened afterwards that you need to know. The boutique owner filed a police report the following morning. Theft of property. Fraudulent use of a forged document. She had the footage, the original note, everything logged and dated. The detective who called me a week later said it was straightforward. Nothing circumstantial. All of it documented. All of it recorded. Daniel submitted every email from the fake account to support a harassment complaint. The account had been created from an IP address registered to Megan's home broadband provider. She hadn't even used a VPN. I've thought about that since, about how confident she must have been. Confident that I would absorb it quietly, the way I always had. Confident that my patience was the same as absence. It wasn't. Megan couriered the dress back 4 days later. Original garment bag, tissue paper folded back inside. No note. Just the dress on its hanger, returned without a single word. I had it cleaned. It's in a preservation box in my wardrobe now. Not because I'll wear it again, because I paid for it with 4 months of savings. Because it belonged to me. Because she doesn't get to be the reason I don't have it. The harder reckoning was the family one. That's the part that doesn't resolve cleanly, because the voicemail hadn't shocked everyone the way it had shocked me. There were people at that table who had watched Megan's patterns for years, who had noticed the way she circled my milestones with something that looked like love and felt, from a certain angle, like something darker. Who had let it go, the way you let things go in families, because naming it felt more dangerous than carrying it. Those conversations took a long time. Some of them are still happening. Megan has not spoken to me, to Daniel, or to our parents since that night. I don't know what version of events she tells. I don't know what she has built around herself to make it make sense. But I know this. What she wanted was never really the dress. I understood that on the night of the wedding, when everyone had gone, Daniel and I were the only two left. When I showed him the last thing, 6 months before the wedding, Megan and I were in a cousin's group chat. Ordinary conversation, logistics for a family dinner. A cousin sent a photo of my engagement ring with a string of celebration emojis. Megan reacted with a heart in the group, but she also sent the cousin a private message. The cousin screenshotted it, not thinking anything of it, just passing along something she found mildly funny, and sent it to me with a laughing emoji. I read it, filed it away, told myself it wasn't serious, but I never deleted it. Because somewhere quiet in my chest, I knew. I showed it to Daniel that night, the two of us on the venue's empty terrace, fairy lights still strung above us, the sound of a river somewhere below. He read it once. Then again, handed my phone back quietly, and what it said. A single sentence. Reframed everything I thought I understood about my sister. Megan had written to our cousin, "Good for her. Must be nice to always land on your feet. Some of us have to work for things." The cousin had sent it with a laughing emoji. Forgot about it within the hour, probably. But I read it and kept it. Told myself it was just Megan being Megan. Told myself everyone says things in private they don't mean. Told myself that the night she sat on my kitchen floor with Prosecco and squeezed my hand, that was real. That the smile was real. That the hug in the boutique when she looked at me in the mirror and said I looked perfect, that was real. Some of it was. That's the part that took the longest to sit with. Daniel read the message on the terrace. Handed my phone back. He said, "How long have you been carrying that?" I said, 6 months. He said, "And you still invited her?" I said, "She's my sister." He put his hand over mine. We stayed there for a while without saying anything else, and the river went on below us, and neither of us had the words for what the evening had been. Here's what I know now. She didn't want the dress. She didn't even want my life. She just couldn't stand watching me have one. That's what I've come back to again and again. Not the forged signature, not the fake emails, not showing up in my dress and accepting compliments from people who didn't know me. Those were the actions. The root was something much older and quieter, a feeling she had been living inside for so long that it had stopped feeling like jealousy and started feeling like something owed. That's not someone who made a terrible choice in a moment of weakness. That's someone who got lost a long time ago and kept walking. I don't have anger left for her. I have grief for the version of this that could have existed. The sister who was actually happy for me. The sister whose hug in the boutique was only what it looked like. That version of Megan didn't make it to my wedding, but she was there, in pieces, at different points in our lives. And losing her is the part that costs something real. What I want to tell you, and I mean this for anyone listening who has stayed quiet to protect themselves, who has been patient when every part of them wanted to speak, is this. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. There is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. That holds and waits and builds carefully, while everyone around it assumes it's passive. Megan saw my patience and mistook it for the absence of power. She was wrong. And I think the most important decision I made, not the projector, not the USB drive, not the microphone, was the decision to refuse to become someone I didn't want to be to respond to someone who had already lost their way. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't lie. I didn't humiliate her for sport. I let her own actions speak in a room full of witnesses. That's all. Daniel and I have been married for 2 years. We have a flat with a small balcony where I grow herbs, which I mostly forget to water. We argue about ordinary things. We have a life that belongs to us and to nobody else. The dress is in its box. The police report is on record. And I am still the person I was before any of this happened, which is the only thing I was genuinely afraid of losing. If I could go back and say something to the Claire who was sitting on those stairs after the boutique's phone call, I'd say this: you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to burn things down to protect what's yours. Sometimes you just have to wait. Sometimes patience is the whole plan. She didn't want the dress. She just couldn't stand watching me have one. And that is something she will never be able to take. If you've ever had to stay silent to protect yourself, when every part of you wanted to speak up, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe. I'm here every day. I'll see you tomorrow.